Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this new session of the NEOS Education Science Seminar. We have not one, not two, but three speakers, and they are going to share with us the experience on building world in NEOS, talking about the processes that are involved. Welcome to all our audience here in NEOS. Welcome to our audience on Twitch. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much, Jason Mo, for the production. He's at the video cameras here with his crew, Projectivity, and Carlos. Thanks again for your help. And today we have three speakers, and we're going to start right now here with Crusher, who is going to present the work he has created for the MCC 2022. So if you have never heard about these MCC, they are competition where creators once a year have 1 month and only 1 month to create from scratch an entire world. And the last one was in February this year. And we are lucky here to have Crusher, DeliriousJax, and our third speaker, Rustybot, which actually is going to start those three talks. Again, those sessions are recorded and they are live on Twitch. So make sure that you're on your best behavior. And Rustybot, yeah, off you go.
Hello. I did the Rusty M.E.C.H, which is a 1 to 3 person piloted giant armored humanoid vehicle. Last year I did a exosuit, which was a 2-person thing. And so this year I wanted to go even bigger than that because I always get a kick out of having multiple people working on, or not working on, but controlling the same. And in VR, it feels like you're standing right next to the person. So it just makes it all the more of a cooperative experience. And my friend Sloppy McFloppy made both of these drawings. The first one was before I actually started playing NEOS, and he was explaining to me the things that you could do in here. And I mean, I didn't believe him yet, but because it sounds so crazy. And then the second one, the exosuit, is after I told him about that idea, since I was already playing. But this one, the mech, had always been sticking in my head, and I was hoping to be able to make it for a big project at some point once I actually knew how. Because there's just not a lot out there that lets you sort of be, like, combine with a person and control the same thing together with just sitting next to each other and kind of being in the same avatar almost. So here's one of the prototypes of it versus my man and friend Crimson. And you can see that I've got the limbs working, but it doesn't look like much because I always go for the functionality first. And then the model is sort of what I have issues with doing, where normally people would go into a Blender or another 3D program. I pretty much always make my things within NEOS. I'm all made out of game objects right now. So same thing goes for the mech. And when I'm doing stuff like that, it's sort of hard to get the exact shapes that I needed. And I ended up just putting it off for a while. So I was running around with this, giving it all sorts of features when it was basically just a skeleton. And that, I think, is just one of the challenges of doing a solo project is, if I don't do something, then it doesn't get done. So I really need to make sure that stuff like the modeling and the UI and the sound design, those types of things, I need to watch out for personally. And, everybody has a list of stuff that they're not quite as experienced in as others. But the main part of it was getting the limbs working properly and making sure that it feels good. And you can see that even with the first versions here, where right away it's just a platform of 3 stands so that you have enough, spaces for each pilot. The legs didn't even work at that point. And the very next version had the arms in it, because the most important part is getting it to feel heavy and feel weighty. Because one problem that you can have in VR a lot of the time is things just feel like they don't have any mass. You can throw something around, like you can pick up a boulder if it's grabbable, and it doesn't feel like anything because you're still just holding your controller. So you have to manually put the delay and the weight behind it to make it feel like you're doing something powerful and make it satisfying to actually move. The next part of it is the modeling of it. You can see how, I'm going to give the pointer, there we go. For this one, it's just the 3 platforms. That's the basic skeleton without fingers yet. And then the hands. The hands were a fun part because I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see my fingers here, but I have an index. And so I wanted to make sure I had support for that type of thing. And I'm going to bring out right now a prototype of the hand when I was figuring out how to get the fingers properly. And that's this. And I should be able to make it scalable real quick. But basically what this does is it just takes the closest person, which obviously is me right now, and it will replicate the finger movements onto those joints. So essentially what I did is just take a couple nodes that are in-game that output the rotation values from the sensors, and you just plug it into any slot and it'll give it that transform. So then I have this one that also has the thumb, and I shortened the palm a bit so it doesn't look weird. This is almost like a raptor claw. That'd be cool. And this one has the thumb, but it still has the problem where it doesn't feel like it weighs anything. Like I'm flinging it around right now, and the fingers are real snappy. In the final mech, there are smoothing values on all these so that it doesn't one-to-one follow your finger, and it makes it feel a lot chunkier. And then the next one you can see is, oh, my pointer's wrong. There we go. Skeleton, the one with the hands, and then the what I call the Doodle Mech, which is just the same one as before, but with the sort of canopy shell drawn on. And that's usually how I do my prototyping, is I'll just take like a pen and, you know, you can just draw shapes, right? Because this is VR, you can do whatever you want. So then what I do is take, say, a platform and put a little box on top of it, and then screen here, and 2 little eyes. And then there's like a prototype drone or something, right? Put my antenna on it. And then after that, I just sort of take the game shapes and use them to fill this in, and obviously make it more precise and everything. But so with the Doodle Mech, you can see I have the shell set out to pretty much exactly what that ended up as, because I use it as a rough guide. This is what I call I mean, it's a sketch, really. It's a 3-dimensional sketch. And that's another good thing is you can, you know, I don't like where this is. I'll put it up here maybe. And I can clean it all up. So very good for that. The next thing is the canopy opening and closing, the modeling of that, because recently I've been getting into learning how to use Blender to make some simple meshes. So for example, I've got my like chest cavity here with my power core in it. There's, you know, obviously this panel has to open up, and you can't really do that with in-game bevel cubes. So for the mech, I ended up having to do a couple funky things with slicer materials to get it working exactly right. But I mean, you know, I could do that better nowadays. But things just progress quickly in here. And that's most of it for the modeling. So I want to give a special thanks also to Ren for doing the map of the area in like a day, which was incredible, because it's a lot of the competition is presentation as well. You know, your stuff can be cool, but you have to be able to show it off as well. You can visit the world at the MMC22 Rusty M.E.C.H. You can just search Rusty in the world browser. And then to finish things off, I'd just like to give out show off a demonstration of what the thing actually does. which is, here we go, the mech. And I'm going to go to the middle and there we go. Okay. So then when I hit initialize, we have control of everything within here. And like I said, the main important part is getting the weighty feeling of it and making it chunky and heavy. So it feels like you're actually moving something around that has a difficult time moving, that would be powerful. And I think, I mean, you know, I did a decent job. I could do better. You can always do better. But that's another thing about making in VR is there's always improvements. There are always things that you look at and go, I could do that better now. But you got to start somewhere. And I think that really this isn't as complicated as it looks like with all the moving parts and stuff. Yeah. And then it's got a little recall. Where'd I put the remote? There we go. Yeah. Right. So I think that's it for me. Thanks so much, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rustybot, for sharing with us your word. I would like to call now the next speaker. We're gonna keep Crusher for the end, and DeliriousJax. If you are would like to come on stage and load your talk, that would be great. Thank you very much. Don't forget to put yourself in the shouting mode. Yeah, let me give you some help here in that. Yeah, we just need to click on the little corner.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and here, code.
Okay, cool. So,
Off you go.
all right, so I'm Jax. This is the SS Stardust. There you can see it just behind that satellite there. So the project started out as I've always wanted to create, just in general, a spaceship. I've always adored the fact that spaceships are the most incredibly complex yet also simple things at the same time. It's a tube that travels through space. It's the greatest thing in the world and off the world as well. So I've always had a dream of like, well, if I had my own spaceship, what would it be? So that's how this started. And as things went on, I really have to point fingers at everybody who ever visited me while I was working on the world, because this world would not have actually developed the way that it did without the people who were coming in and were just playing with things as I was building it and throwing it in. And based on how people were interacting and using the world, it actually developed into something far more as time went on. So it went from being just, I want a spaceship, to it being a social world, but with a game mode. So it kind of just evolved as it went on. The main thing that I really wanted to do, though, was I wanted it to have tangible mechanics. I wanted the spaceship to have a life of its own. I wanted it to be fed fuel. I wanted it to use up that fuel. I wanted it to transfer things into other things. I wanted the players to be able to use those things and those resources to manage and, decide what and where they wanted to go with things. So the first thing I started with was most of the controls and the dynamic variables and so forth that would transfer items to and from each thing. As more people, as I said, came in and started playing with these items, I started to realize this isn't just going to be a spaceship. This is going to be a place where people will likely be spending their time. And I didn't intend for this to be a game mode. I didn't intend for this to have a beginning and an end. I just wanted it to be a spaceship. So I started to, at this point, I had not decided which exact category I actually wanted to submit to. I knew it was a world because it was a vehicle that was in a world of its own. It cannot be taken out of that world like most other vehicles. But I had done vehicles in the past. I was actually one of the first people to release a vehicle system to the public of Neos several years ago, and watching that process evolve has actually helped me a great deal in kind of defining how I wanted to present the control and interaction types, and watching people use these items started to give me an idea. It wasn't just about having a spaceship and flying it through space. It was about having a crew. So as time went on, I started to think, what does a crew do? And one of the first things I had to do before that was, well, I have to tell them how the ship works. So this little data pad here popped in kind of near the end, and it just gave everybody an idea. It's not there are no rules, there are no steps to follow, these are just guidelines. You pick this up and it says, here's the manual for the ship. Here's what you need to know to get started. And from there, I watched people come in, and before this existed, I would just give them a heads up, like, here's what you're looking at and here's what it does. And then I would just watch them. I would sit back. Sometimes I would build while I was mute or program, and I would just listen to people. And I started getting this realization that they were not just using the world or commanding the ship. They were interacting with one another like a crew would. And that was part of the intent when I started building it. The bridge has 3 seats. One of them is stationary. The other 2 are for commanding and piloting. And I started taking real heavy notes on the communication between them all. And some research that I did leading up to the creation of this project was actually playing a lot of games, among them being some bridge simulators, some spaceship crewing games that I actually dumped quite a few hours in with my friend Zane over there. We played quite a few games together, all kind of, us and a few other people, all kind of just getting the feel of, like, what does this give us and what are we doing here? What makes this so fun? And I realized in the early stages, just having fun with your friends. So by the time I got through most of the process and kind of putting things together, and I got past my plants, which were super important. If you go to this world and you don't water my plants, I'm going to cry. Please water my plants. They're the most important. Actually, they do nothing, but don't tell anyone that. It's just really funny to watch people scramble to the plants and be like, make sure the plants get watered. That was the most fun, is trying to trick people into whether or not they did something. But I started to see the spaceship come to life, and that actually inspired me to create the plants at all. I wanted a hydroponic system, but I didn't know what it would do. So when I started to see the ship's crew come to life and people who were playing and play testing it, that's about when I started putting in the plants. And that's why I love the plants so much, is because that's when I had the true realization of what this world is meant to be. A social world. It is not a game. It is not technically miscellaneous. It is there to get people to engage with each other to complete a task, but in the most passive sense possible. All you do is you go outside and you mine. You collect some resources. There are some tools that it will give you, and you will collect these tools, or you will use the tools in the bridge to navigate, to find and collect these resources, and you'll bring them back to the ship. You keep the ship fed, and then you go and you fly around, and it'll give you some of these objectives to complete, so that you can continuously use the world. I must have skipped or I forgot to put in a slide. To continuously use the world without it really getting old. And then finally, the final classification of this world is that it is the most complex fidget spinner you will ever have. Because I'm a fidgeter. I don't like to, I'm not very good at necessarily having just plain conversations with my hands at my sides. I will often, play with my hands, or I'll idly just work on something, and that I realized, well, there we go. It's a very big fidget spinner, and that's basically it. And at the end, and I started to take in more and more of what people were doing, that by the end of it, I realized, okay, it's several things all at once. It's a game, it's a social world, it's a complex fidget spinner, and one of the most confusing things was how many people. I don't think I hosted a single session building this world where people did not spot the sun and immediately fly into it. Don't ask me. I don't know. But everybody likes to fly into the sun. So, but by the end of everything, when everything was said and done, putting the world together was really just a matter of dedicating it to the heart of what it evolved into naturally. And that was a social world where people could go spend time with one another, work together. All these tools that I put into it, all the gadgets and gizmos, those would amount to nothing if there were not people there using them and making them work together. It is a clock. The cogs are not connected because this clockwork does not work without someone to wind them. And the people coming in to wind this clockwork is what made it real. And that's the story behind Stardust. Really, it's actually quite a simple process. As for the ship itself, I started off creating the hull, the outside, and giving it a layout. It was pretty simple. It's got 4 rooms and a centrifuge. There's nothing to it. But then filling it with the gadgets and gizmos, that was the part that really started to bring things to life, is just making it look like it and kind of feel like it could be lived in or operated. And so I went from making the layout to making the items and the panels and the control panels and some of the screens that were just on display to give it a little bit more interactivity. Namely being maybe I forgot to put these in order. Oh well. Anyway, so there's a command station. I probably forgot to mess with that. I apologize. My slides took backseat priority to family time for the holiday week for this week, so I wasn't able to get this done as well as I wanted to. But the command center, where you take command, you're the first person in the world, and then you assign people certain security levels, where they'll be able to enter certain rooms, or they won't be able to enter certain rooms. So not only does it give you life, does it give you the opportunity to put some life into the ship itself, but it also gives you control on who will take what roles. So you can have a little bit of some role-playing exercises or activities, just kind of approach it however you want to. That's basically the end of this. Is assembling it was, I wanted people to make it what they wanted to, and as a result of people using the world, it became what they wanted it to be. And so this the process of creating this world was literally just start somewhere and let people fill it with life, and that is what the Stardust is. So
great. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jazz, for this talk and sharing with us your process. Can I call Crusher on stage? Excellent. All right, let me help you. Loading. Excellent. And of course, at the end of Crusher's presentation, we will have a Q&A for about 15 minutes. All right, take it away, Crusher.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Crusher. I was the team lead for Burning Memory. I'm going over a process and a thing behind different aspects of the project. So the first thing I and Jeff, my team member that helped make Burning Memory possible, did was we jumped straight into it. So we started fleshing our ideas, and we originally had an idea for like a boxing game, no one for like an audiovisual game, but a few days before MMC started, I was recommending a video for Every End of Time, or if you don't know about it, is a music album depicting the 6 stages of dementia. And it got me thinking about how we could represent this visually with the environment, and also took a little bit of inspiration from PT, where the player would loop around, and within each loop, the environment would change. So once we had a rough idea of what we wanted to do, we started planning. And as you can see, we just wrote down any and all ideas we had for the stages and started creating a timeline of roughly when and we should get each stage of the project done. We also agreed to have a minimal viable product or an MVP done by those first 2 weeks. This meant having the core of the game done, which wouldn't be a full scope, but would still give the player the experience we wanted to give them. This is also due to last year's MMC, where we left it to the deadline and didn't give much time, or really any time, for playtesting, which is crucial for this year, where we bounced off a lot of ideas and even came up with new ones through playtesting. And then once we had a rough idea of what we were going to do, I started thinking about how this environment was going to look and feel. So to communicate with this with Jeff, I made this sketch to show how, the player should probably start in this bedroom area, go out to the balcony, brush their teeth here, down the stairs, run the TV here, and then to the kitchen over here to make some coffee. And this would be like the morning routine that they repeat throughout the stages. As you can see, this made like a really nice spiraling curve down the stage that we found quite intuitive during playtesting. So with the once we had our level design done, we started thinking about, how are we going to get these players between each stage? But we want to avoid teleporting due to we had a lot of issues with it last year with people falling through the world. So we thought, why don't we just stack each stage on top of each other and at a basement area with the black boxes, so to almost transition the player between each stage. Also found to continue it quite nicely, and then with stage 1. So stage 1 is essentially our tutorial level. So the player would start off with the comment system, where they would be told, brush your teeth, make some coffee, and so on. But because they're only there for a couple of seconds, some players would miss this. So to encourage them to do the steps in the right order, we'd open the bathroom door slightly to encourage them to enter, or put the vinyl for the first stage closer to the staircase and the TV remote as far as we could, as this originally was close together, but players would do this in the wrong order. Of course, issue of the logic, so we just rearranged them and seemed to fix the issue. We then started to introduce the idea for sticky notes, where the player would go find the family photo down the basement. This would be an objective to go down, and part of it just being a part of the morning routine. We then go to stage 2, where we start to introduce more and more sticky notes and replace the comment system, as we had the idea of the comment system almost being the thoughts of the character that you're playing as. And as the player's progressing, they're writing down more and more notes to try and remember what the routine. You can also see with the toothpaste, they question if they put it there. And when that happens, I'll bring this up. You can see when that happens with stage 2, there will already be music playing, but when you pick it up, it would glitch and return back to normal. That was originally found accidentally by Jeff, but we found that made a really nice effect. Give the player this is intentional. It's not just randomly the next day and objects are being moved around. You can also see how the colors have been slightly shifted, and some geometry is a little distorted if you know what you're looking for, but it's pretty similar to first stage. Then we move to stage 3, where you can see how the colors are now really starting to desaturate, and the objects themselves are now starting to distort, especially in the kitchen, for example. We also start to introduce the idea for more of a story element, where the player would have these journals that we actually discussed with our playtesters, to have, they weren't quite sure if it was their birthday or not, even though if you remember in the first slide, we had this calendar, which would check off as you go through the stages until this stage, where the calendar would be almost barely day 20 crossed off, to show how they're really deteriorating and aren't even quite sure of their own birthday. And then once they've completed the steps, go to stage 4. We can see now how the environment has become almost monochrome, and the railing and everything is really starting to distort. Jeff also had the idea of making the handwriting for the sticky notes and journals more and more scribbly, to really show how this character was deteriorating through the stages and how more and more desperate they got trying to search for this photo. So, and then this took us, and also with this stage, there's intentionally no coffee cup to make the coffee. Some people thought this was a bug, but this was intentional due to we want to give the player a feeling of confusion and almost distraught, looking for this coffee cup until a couple of seconds, like 30-ish seconds later, the door would open, letting them through. And then this would take us to stage 5, where you can see how now the environment itself is really starting to distort, as even just like this fog blocking some of your view. And then with this, you can see how the objects go from like really nice saturated, pretty much normal, and as they progress, go more and more distorted and desaturated until the final stage over here, stage 5, where it's become almost unrecognizable for the player. Really trying to give that feeling of familiarity, but still it deteriorating. We then, also with this stage, I'll play a small bit of the music. You can see how I wanted to try and emulate a little bit of burning of every other time, but making the music degrade for each stage. You can see almost cut out and completely distort by stage 5. Yeah. We also, since we had a little bit of extra time, we had this idea for achievements, which I haven't really seen much in Neos lately. But I thought, as we discussed about playtests, we thought it was a really nice idea for them, if they wanted to go back and complete them, there would be like a final journal entry for them to collect if they wanted a little something more. We also had the times there, which we actually had someone speedrun, which I found quite interesting, burning memory, but it was just to show how like the experience takes as long as it did. And it was also a good time to get our 10-minute mark that we wanted to reach for the game. But yeah, thank you for listening. There's one final point I want to end on is, although yes, the topic for this was quite serious, we still try to enjoy ourselves with the process and try to like just have fun while making it, and you'll learn a lot just letting go of all the like little details and mistakes here and there, as there are plenty in Burning Memory. But we still thought we made something cool, and that's all that really matters. Yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you around.
Thank you, Crusher. Well, here you go. 3 super interesting and very different talks. So thank you again to our 3 speakers who share their process and experience. And now I would like to open the discussion by taking some questions from the floor. Who wants to start? Yes, sure.
Hi.
Don't forget to put yourself in shouting mode, please. Yep.
Oh, one moment.
Right, yeah.
Yes, of course. Sorry about that. Yeah, Crusher, Rustybot, and Jazz. Thank you very much.
Great. And
Thanks,
actually, my question is for all of them. I wonder if each of you could share a bit of your either education, experiences, or luck of birth, or whatever that brought you like the skill sets to do amazing builds across the board here. And also the drive to do it. You probably think this is normal because it's what you do, but it's really amazing stuff. And how did each of you get to where you are here?
Great question.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Um,
I mean, I just like making cool robot stuff. I wasn't really a big maker of anything. I just sort of played video games, and then as soon as I got in VR and the manipulation you can have over 3D objects in a space like this, I just went, oh man, I can do whatever I want. And then I started doing that, and now people really like it. So it just kind of works out. Like education-wise, I'm going into mechanical engineering, but I haven't yet, other than a little bit outside of high school. So, I mean, you know, you don't really have to be anything special to start doing this. It's kind of just a matter of, oh, hey, what if I had a little dude here? And then there. That's my experience.
Yeah. For me, I was originally introduced into like game dev, for example, back in high school, where I made like these small little prototypes, and that introduced me to the idea of like, well, I can actually make these things that I've pretty much dreamed of, and things like that. But as I started to get older, I found that like, okay, I can actually do more than just little 2D games. Like, and then I found Neos, for example, and saw the potential of like how much functionality there is here, and made things like Playtester and this to really try and push myself and learn as much as I could about these different systems, or how like these much larger developers than I like put these all together, and how they do the process and so on. Yeah.
Yes.
No, nothing special. I was actually homeschooled all of my life outside of college itself. For the most part, even a lot of it was self-taught outside of a few project classes that I would I'll go out and attend on my own, and kind of just absorb the information as it came to me, or where I could find it. But yeah, outside of I did wind up getting a degree in college in multimedia graphic design, but outside of that, it was all just I just wanted to learn these things. So once I got through high school, I just continued to seek the knowledge, and because I started a lot in photography and stuff like that in high school, and it kind of just went into game development as time went on, and then from there I got a little bit more into science, a little bit more into I don't want to say psychology because I looked at it and I was like, that's cool, maybe I could use some concepts for what I make, and that's about the extent of that. But no, it was just the drive to go out and make stuff.
Right. Thank you. Questions? Any volunteer? Yep. M.E.C.H.
Hello, thanks. They were all very interesting, all three, but particularly for me, the Crusher's talk on the dementia thing, since we have a research project using NEOS to try to improve the empathy and understanding in aged kids, where we put in, nurses and things, and we give them the experience of having various, visual and motor abnormalities. And I wonder whether you'd considered actually applying your world for research or benefit like that. Like, is it just for fun, your world, or do you think it might have some application?
We definitely made it to try and shed more of a light onto dementia as a whole, as both I and Jeff have had experience with it, or at least have known someone with it. So if other researchers want to use it to try and understand what these people go through, I would also recommend checking out Every End of the Time, which is like a 6-hour long playlist of this music album that we really took inspiration from to try and show how this someone with this disease would progress, and also to try and help people connect with those people to understand what they might be going through.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I'm going to try and corner you, if I may, offline after the seminar.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you.
Right then.
Questions?
Really, huh? Really, huh? What is this?
Any question from the floor? Yep, Cyril.
Well, actually, more of a comment, but I really appreciated the fact that all of these presentations had a human element to them. They weren't just technological tours de force. They were either things encouraging people to work together and giving them the tools and ability to do it, or tools to increase sensitivity and understanding of challenges that many people face. So basically, just kudos for that. That brought each of them above the bar for me of really being outstanding projects. That's my German Shepherd Pitbull mix. You take the toy away from her if you want to. I'm not gonna. Muting again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, appreciate
carry
that.
on with that.
That's one of my favorite things. Sorry, is seeing what people do in things like this. You know, like I've had people come up to me after the project and say, "Hey, I love your mech. How did you even start making something like that?" And I went, "Well, I did this, and then went from there." And then that inspires them to do something, and that is the best when something that I do can make someone else build something cool, because then that just keeps spreading around.
I mean, I like looking at Jazz and Rustybot, talks and the process. It's very interesting to see how you almost, follow a process of an artist, by drawing a few lines and then refining and refining and refining and refining, rather than having a good idea of the intimate detail of where you want to be, and then basically start to build it. I mean, it's really interesting to see that process. And the question I have in mind is, okay, those words you have what, 30 days things together, and that's something that I always I always wanted to contribute something to this MMC, and the thing that always stopped me is I'm not going to have the time. So I'm interested to know how much time did you put in building those words in terms of hours per day, perhaps, or hours per week? How many times? How many hours?
For me, at least, it was just a matter of every free moment. I maybe took in total a couple days, maybe about 2 days. 2 or 3 days in total to just play video games for myself, just to not overwork myself or overexert it. But like outside of that, it was just me. So every waking moment.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I felt that too with my this one and with the exosuit. Is when it's a solo project, like I said, it doesn't get done if you don't do it. So I asked for fewer shifts during the month at work so that I could put more into having the mech happen. And I mean, it was worth it, apparently.
Cool.
I mean, for me, like, because I live outside the world to Jeff, it's a little tricky getting the schedule right. So I'd work, I think it was like 2 hours during the mornings and 2 hours during the evenings. And I'd be roughly matched up with Jeff. And then during weekends we'll work pretty much the whole day or the whole night for him. But I was gonna say, like, I also to comment on the process, I find it interesting how Rustybot and Jax, they went through the world starting with like a rough idea and then progressed. While with me and Jeff, we tried to plan as much as we could in the beginning and then get the rough concept done by the first 2 weeks, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah, no, it's neat how different workflows can sort of end up in the same sort of, I don't know, quality. No, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Where there's so many different ways to do the same sort of thing, And like I did have a semi plan, nothing as put together as your flow chart thing. I just had a list of I should have this feature and this feature and this feature, and then by the end of it, most of them are crossed out. But at the same time, you do have to write a little bit down, just if not just to avoid scope creep, because that's a big one.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions? No? Well, please join me to say thank you to Jazz, Crusher, and Rustybot for this very exciting session.
Thanks
And please stay tuned because thank you for your time. But next week, stay tuned because next week we're going to have another panel with another 3 talks. So please pay attention to our Discord channel on the NEOS Education and Science channel. We will post here in the next couple of days another set of interesting talk. And I can tell you that already, even for the following week, we have already another speaker. So if you know any of the participants in the MMC 2022 who would like to contribute to the talk, let us know. Ask that person to contact either Jason Moore here or myself via the NEOS Education Science Discord channel. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting 2 weeks of talk coming our way here. So again, thank you, the 3 of you. Thanks, Jason Moore. Thanks, Carlos. Thank you very much, Projectivity on the camera. And we see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. That was great.
No worries yet. Thanks again, guys.